Alright, we've got the one thing. I'm not exactly sure what's up with this. Could be... Yeah, I was thinking it feels like it's a strip that should be on the inside here. But, oh well. Let's see, nothing else in there. It's on the side, and take a look. It's a small update. Shikimori's. And then that says something. Okay, I see that's a region A and B there. Okay, yeah, it's Shikimori is not just a cutie. I was like, can I remember the name? Can I remember the name? The answer is barely. Just enough to eventually point out what it should be. So who releases? That's a Crunchyroll thing. Mostly because this doesn't look like a lot of normal releases, so 12 episodes on 2 Blu-ray discs. There's episodes and bonus. Okay, yeah, it says there English and Japanese, so I think this has an English dub with it. It's a very different way for it to be packaged than I'm used to seeing. I'm not sure much about the content of the show, though, but an interesting curiosity. Next up, we have Tomodachi Game. Back looking strange like the other one, so maybe this is just a feature of the Crunchyroll Funimation releases. You know, on account of the fact that I think Funimation as a Funimation is not necessarily it anymore. I think Sony owns them all and combined. Okay, can we apply our new knowledge? Because that says regions A and B. That's 12 episodes on 2 Blu-ray discs, video, and there's audio. I see English and Japanese. How much would it take to betray your friends? Sounds interesting and edgy, and it's got very... I guess there's not a singular weird-looking face involved with this. Anime does seem to like to do that. Like, although, to be fair, it's something that works mostly because it's animation, right? And then last but not least, I couldn't remember if I actually had Fate Stay Night on Blu-ray already. I guess I do have the original Japanese release, and it's probably another, but you know what? Whatever. I mean, it makes sure there's more stuff to show y'all today. I do have some other stuff. But, you know, I've been unboxing anime, so anime is the most important thing, hence why it's here first. Region A only. All 24 episodes on 3 discs. Includes English dub. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if y'all told me, oh yes, you already got this English dub a billion years ago. And that's fine. I decided to be lazy about this one. Although right now I'm wondering which Fates they need. Although I guess, not sure. If we get to other stuff, this is an interesting little trinket, a Lucario phone strap. Just a gift from a friend who, a coworker who traveled to Japan kind of recently. And then I've got some tabletop game stuff I bought. Basically, my parents wanted to do get together, and I got the impression nobody was buying a lot of stuff that had like done a lot of this stuff. So I brought some of my limited knowledge of things I had played with coworkers. So, you know, Saboteur, this is an interesting, simple little card game where the basic idea, I kind of want to turn this around like that, just to have that. The idea is you have cards, everybody plays a dwarf, although one or more, depending on how big your game is, could be Saboteurs. Dwarves are trying to place cards to get closer to the rocks that may contain gold, and the Saboteur is trying to prevent them from reaching that. Although, it's kind of a game of deception. Simple enough. I got Codenames XXL. I was just trying to get Codenames, but I wasn't paying too close attention. But XXL is actually kind of nice, just because it's the tiles are really big, so it'll work on a bigger table better than normal. I got Tsuro. If you're not familiar with this game, I assume you're familiar with Codenames just because that one's been implemented everywhere. This one is a little... I haven't seen it a whole lot, but the idea is you start on the edge of the board, and whenever it's your turn, you place a tile to continue moving forward, and your goal is to just keep moving forward without falling. It's a very simple game, very zen. Something that you kind of can just play to kind of zone out, I guess. And then I got Dixit. A game that has to deal with abstract art. It says there's a lot of awards, and it makes sense because the concept of the game is nice enough such that I think it scales well to its audience, like the people playing. So it does work for kids that are fairly young. I think down here it says 8+. But at the same time, like my dad made a reference to Paul McCartney, Beatles. So an 8-year-old nowadays might not know who that is, but yeah. Anyways, I didn't remember either. I'm like, the name sounds familiar. Why does the name sound familiar? And I just guessed it was a race car and voted for a thing with a race car on it. And I'm like, oh, actually, he was a Beatle, and he was actually referencing a Beatle album. Weird stuff. Anyways, I know that was pretty quick, but here's this week's anime Blu-ray collection update. Alright, let's start going through the list. So with my Friday friend, now we're caught up on My Hero Academia. The next thing we decided to start watching is continuing with ReZero Season 2. I think mostly because he didn't want to forget what he'd seen so far. And the otherworldliness of the witches, I think just the otherworldliness that the second season brings in, it's just very mesmerizing in its own way. It's definitely something. ReZero has its flawed moments that can make it kind of hard to keep going for one reason or another. But at least at this point in season 2, it's not that bad. It's at the part where when the story flows. I guess there's this way that ReZero tells its stories where eventually things just start clicking into place and becoming better, and a lot of information, character growth, etc. kind of happens all at once. And that's about where in the series, or rather where in the season we are. Good stuff. Nice to revisit. And I do remember that the long-term goal is there is a movie for ReZero that came out that I do believe is dubbed. But if I catch my friend up to it, then I can watch the movie with him. And similarly, there's a Reincarnated as a Slime movie that is also dubbed and on Crunchyroll, and we will probably watch that eventually. But he's prioritizing ReZero just because he kind of wants to get that finality of where the season ends, even though he really likes Reincarnated as a Slime. And I guess we kind of know that the movie's not like a sequel, it's a side story, so maybe not that important. So it's not the highest priority yet, but that's some of the discussions we've had. My weird series that I watched on my own this week is Inuyashiki Last Hero, and I actually really liked it. I could see the ending being done better, and I guess I can't really comment too much about that other than I felt like it could have tied... There seemed to be a theme going on with the show, and I felt like the ending could have essentially happened the same way, but tied slightly better into the overall theming of the story. So, if you're not familiar with it, what's its interesting thing? Well, our main character and another person both get hit by a UFO and rebuilt as absurdly powerful beyond anything Earth can comprehend robots. And the difference between the two of them, I guess, can be best summarized. And the first 2 episodes show this, so it's I'd say actually a really good beginning of this show.
they kind of know they're robots now. How they kind of explore how to feel like they're alive, how to make sure they are alive. And our main character, Inuyashiki, finds out that he gets that feeling by helping people. Whereas, I'm almost thinking I could almost remember the name of the other person. He finds that he feels alive when he's killing other people. And not in some sort of, I'm evil sort of way, but in a much more disturbing, Jesus fucking Christ, he's a psychopathic, sociopath kind of way. It's actually pretty haunting. It's, yeah. That stuff will definitely not be something you forget when you watch the show. But fortunately, being dark isn't its own thing. One of the nice things about our main character is that he's a very unusual hero. And unlike a show that's just like, oh, we're going to take somebody unusual, and then because they became a robot, they become usual, he stays pretty unusual and unique the whole time. So basically, his gimmick is he's a 58-year-old man. Although, I can't help but think that he looks like he might be older. So I guess you could just say that he just hasn't aged particularly well or something like that. Some of his introduction reminds me a little bit of the vice principal from Great Teacher Onizuka in terms of, just kind of being taken for granted, overlooked. Nobody really cares that much for him. In fact, he was out there in the park when he got hit by the UFO because he had discovered he had a stomach cancer. Although that's a common thing in this show for some reason. Like, people just end up with cancers that they're going to die from pretty soon for some reason. More characters than you think really should be showing up in the show. Like, people having cancers, yeah, sure. There's a lot of people like that. But people, it's like, oh, well, we discovered your cancer and it's already terminal and you only have 4 months to live. It's like half the episodes feel like it's not that much, but it's a common theme. But the point is, as a story element, whether or not it's used well in the other situations, for a main character, it's in a place where it's sort of like, he's overlooked and taken for granted and all that stuff, and people just care so little about him, his family cares so little about him, that when he tries to tell them about it, they just talk over him. And he's a very passive old man, and he has feelings of what that person is doing is not right. I wish I could do something about it, but he's a very timid, quiet, silent Japanese salaryman. Kind of the ultimate combination of all those things. And so when it reminds me a bit of Iron Man. Not very specifically Iron Man, but you might remember in the first Iron Man movie when Tony Stark is learning how to fly, basically building his suit and building everything related to it. An element of that really works is that it's basically our main character discovering they're superheroes, but it's with their twist, and it's got Tony Stark's engineering. Oh, we're going to test this out. We got silly robots that are kind of funny along the way as well. But also him just kind of getting used to it and giving his also charismatic performance. And I think that works not just because, he's learning how to be a superhero, but because, there's that unique flair to all of it that's just present through the whole thing. And the ending of that one, it kind of loses a little bit of that. Like, I don't remember the ending being that. No, it's just like, I guess it led up to this, and it's okay. It's not a bad ending. But it's like, everything up to that moment was super special. And I guess in some ways Inuyashiki is similar in that he's a timid old man who's now an indestructible robot with all these powers, and how does he handle it? And the answer is he doesn't handle it that well. In fact, there is also this difference between, he's an old man, so his ability to grasp new technology is not as fast as the other person who is a high schooler who picks up on it absurdly fast, and they don't meet each other a whole lot. So you can kind of tell that the anime is getting closer and closer to that, and there's definitely this element of how well is he going to pick up on this stuff, because he's not like completely bad at it, but he does act with that hint of old man who maybe isn't quite used to the newest technology and is needing to play catch up all of a sudden. Like if your parents were, I don't know, in this day and age, if your parents are 58-year-old not using a smartphone, that might be more surprising. But I know when I was younger, parents that age who didn't know, who would not ever be able to pick up a smartphone, they probably have, because smartphones are pretty easy to learn. But, you know, there was that kind of barrier there, and he's not like deep in that barrier, he's just sitting on the side of it, so it keeps things interesting, and him learning this stuff, I don't know, overall, because of his timidness and his understanding that he has to push through it, but you know, he kind of continues, so he may be a robot who can hit somebody and probably explode their head, really, if he wanted to. But he kind of does this very weak fighting thing that's doesn't seem like something anybody would actually try to do. But he does it, and so like while people can hold him back with their hand, you know, he can like grab them and have the strength of a billion suns. So, you know, it's just innocent and kind of pure in a way, and it's really nice. For the ending, yeah, again, I think there are elements of the ending that sort of come out of the blue and sort of, I mean, it's not like they didn't give you hints that the ending was coming, but in a certain way, it's like, why did this have to happen? Because it doesn't feel like it's thematically related to everything else that was going on. It was just kind of this side plot that was going to come along and become a main plot for the ending. And that could have been okay. You know, that could be handled better, probably, I think. But at the same time, to a certain degree, you're like, yeah, I guess something like this has to happen. And the way they executed it, well, it was okay. It could definitely have been a lot better, I think. So, overall, neat. Let's see. The other thing I thought about this show is it kind of reminded me a little bit of Satoshi Kon's works. Not in the editing, directing that he did, because that's still something that, Jesus fucking Christ, if you never watch anything of his, watch it and then be like, I did not know that my mind could be blown away by just watching something like that. Like, and it isn't even just like, oh, they animated something pretty, you know, it's not like Ponyo, which is a very pretty movie to look at. It's like, oh wow, these animators were like busting their asses to make something very pretty in that one. No, it's again, it's the way he directs and the way he edits that made his stuff special. But the comparison here is outside of that, and more along the lines of, you can kind of tell Satoshi Kon had a concern for elements of society that he felt were underappreciated. And it felt like this show was kind of in that spirit as well. I mean, our main character is already an overlooked old man. So, but it also kind of showed some of the stuff where he's like, well, here's this concern with homelessness. It didn't discuss, like, salaryman suicides or anything like that. It had other things. I guess it was exploring a kind of less of a, oh, this is what I worry about society, and we're exploring this about man, but, you know, it was overall really neat. As you can see, I've got a lot to say about it, because I digested a lot of it, and it was pretty good. Let's see, Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, Episode 3. A nice episode. Do I remember anything particular? So the problem is, it's at the top of this list, so I watched it last Wednesday, so this is, of the stuff on this list, the oldest thing, the longest thing ago that I watched. Yeah, because that was Friday. Okay. And yeah, it's hard to say what I would think about it. I think it was just pleasant. I just remember, it's nice. You know, I think if you watch the first couple of episodes, episode 3 would probably be kind of nice too. And maybe you would start watching it not think it, but it's, I guess it's just being nice. Kamikatsu Working for God in the Godless World, episode 5. Jesus fucking Christ. So, I don't think this is actually a good series for the 3-episode rule. Because there's a very good chance that if you go a couple more episodes than 3 episodes, you may have something that you're like, mediocre, or okay, or I don't like. And you may actually have a really, really, really different view on it. The episode 5 was a real doozy. Which I think keeps the rest of the series kind of along the lines of some of the ideas it was thinking, but it showed you that it did some pretty ballsy stuff for this early in a season. Interesting. Let's see. Konosuba, An Explosion on This Wonderful World, Episode 3. What all happened in this episode? Amusing stuff. I think if there's any reason that it's missing something important comedy-wise compared to Konosuba, it's that when you think about it, Konosuba has a better cast of characters for just coming up with super completely off-the-wall jokes. Whereas this one's stuck with all Crimson Demons. And while there's some variety in them, it does mean that, the jokes kind of are, the Crimson Demons are kind of funny. And I think Konosuba remains fresh by mixing it up with a whole lot of other stuff. But what else happened in this episode? I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's not leaving the strongest impression. It's not striking me as bad. Other people may be really enjoying it. I do think that seeing these characters do their stuff is amusing. So it could just be that the characters themselves just aren't attaching themselves to me like a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, you see me talk. I'm almost more of a story guy, and I like how the characters and the story that builds kind of happens, I guess. I guess that I would have to see if that's consistent with all these things. But, fine. The Legendary Hero is Dead, Episode 5. I'd actually say that I think the previous episode was maybe kind of leaning in a more entertaining direction. And Episode 5 here, I'd say, is... I'm not getting as much of a feeling of, oh my god, I hate all the characters here. Although, to be fair, I've never hated the that one girl. But she's kind of... she's been one of the less people. And the princess that they introduced is not that bad either. But I think it's building a healthier dynamic than just, oh my god, is it doing this kind of joke again? I mean, the jokes haven't necessarily been bad. I think the problem is just that it's hard to like the characters earlier on. And right now, they're a lot more okay. It's wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon. Season 4, Episode 14. I think, at least I hope I updated it to whatever episode I just watched. And if there's any problem with this, again, it's the same thing I said last week. It's that, Jesus Christ, I want to see what's happening next. The focus has been where it kind of needed to be, where the most intense action is. But, oh my god, I want to see those other parts, because the fact that it's more harrowing than a goddamn 3-episode battle should tell you just how intense it kind of is. And I have to say, Season 4 has been really good so far. Dr. Stone, Season 3, Episode 3. That was an interesting twist in this episode. I'm not sure if it was interpreted correctly by the characters, but if it was misinterpreted, then the show's being smart. If it was interpreted, the show's being smart. So I think it's pretty good what this episode did. So if you were going by the 3-episode mark for Season 3, I'd actually say you'd be off to a pretty good start. So overall, Dr. Stone continuing to be entertaining and neat. My One-Hit Kill Sister, Episode 5. Okay, I suppose. I think the real problem is I guess with the show, it doesn't feel like there's any good forward direction. Like, oh, are they aiming for this final goal? We don't know. Are they aiming in this general direction? We don't know. Is there maybe some sort of goal with the character interactions? It just sort of is doing what it's doing, so I guess it's okay. Mashley, Magic and Muscles, episode 5. Let's see, let's introduce that character and that. So I think it... Or was that the previous episode? I don't know. Entertaining stuff. I guess I'm mostly just thinking, do I have a good feeling like whenever I fire up another episode, I'm going to get something that feels like it's getting pointed in the direction that this show wanted to go in? Maybe. I guess I felt like this episode introduced the idea of the houses, where it's like, yeah, a lot of the Harry Potter inspiration is showing in some ways. Like, it's 3 houses instead of 4 houses. So they probably got rid of Hufflepuff. And maybe not exactly, but I think the way they divided the 3 houses is definitely its own thing. Do I remember having any feeling for what that might mean? I don't know. I guess it's entertaining. Rokudo's Bad Girls, episode 5. I guess it's a kind of touching episode in terms of where it was in terms of the story it was telling. Staying at a very comfortable distance from that overall creepy concept of this magic is making those girls love him even if they wouldn't naturally love him. So it's kind of, that was a little unsettling, but it's not... this episode was definitely as far away from that being a weird, creepy thing as it could have been. So, it's okay, I guess. T-Coot Crisis, episode 5. Let's see. We had that. We had the kitten. We had that. I guess it's okay. If there's any problem with this episode, it's that... I guess because the show doesn't have a story, it really needs... I guess it either needs to have character development, which it's not really having. Sometimes there's the fake character development of you can just introduce more aliens to the concept of the cute animals on Earth, which a lot of the episodes up to this point do okay. But the central premise, if you like the central premise and just find it funny, this episode's probably fine. But otherwise, the central premise of, they just think these, I would say, badly animated cats. Like, they're not, like, the animation isn't, like, horrible from an animation standpoint. It's just kind of bad from a, I'm not really sure that's capturing the way the animals move and think. And I've already complained about that sort of stuff. Where, again, like, if they're telling, it just feels like they kind of sort of understand them, but maybe don't. For cats, at least, I mean. But, whatever. Next episode, the one coming up on Friday, has capybaras, and interesting to see where that goes. Although, if the humor sticks to the same 3 characters, just kind of always saying the thing is cute, it's not working as much for me just because the animation isn't the real thing. It's not capturing that essence of cuteness for me. Hell's Paradise, episode 6. Great episode. I mean, it's a great series. I'm trying to think what I can say, and that's one of the things about the show that you can kind of tell from the first episode is that it's definitely a show that's not just about, like, flashy ideas. There's also some real character exploration, growth sorts of ideas going on. And this episode had some of that too. Some interesting action scenes as well. And this one isn't as strong on the mystical elements of what's going on, but it is still present there and keeping you interested and curious to see more. Summoned to Another World for a Second Time, episode 5. Again, I think the real problem with the show has been that the fundamental premise isn't bad, but it's not really doing anything with that to wow us. It's just sort of like, here he goes to the next thing that's a step that he already did. And this episode, while it deviates from that, it doesn't do so in a way that feels as satisfying, I suppose, because it goes back to the other classmates and the one girl from his class that obviously liked him, and pretty much about her, and it just sort of is. It's not necessarily bad. It just sort of is. Let's see. The Aristocrats' Otherworldly Adventure, Serving Gods Who Go Too Far, Episode 6. A better episode than some of the ones up till now, and it did some pretty gutsy things that I didn't expect the series to do. I think the main problem for the series is that it would be more interesting if it was exploring what it meant for all of his God's blessings to be at level 10. Like, it explores them maybe sort of individually, maybe in combinations if they needed to be. But this at least wasn't, oh yeah, the princess and the duke's daughter both have a thing for him, and everybody's just like ignoring the rules and breaking the rules because Cain. So it was better than that because it was exploring some other stuff. But if there's any problem, it's that while it was entertaining for it to happen in this episode, I do worry about what the next episode is going to do. If it's just going to fall back into mediocre patterns, I suppose is a better term to use it. Let's see. In Another World with My Smartphone, Season 2, Episode 6. I think if you've watched up to this point in the series, it's probably still going to be very entertaining for you. Because our main character is still building stuff up, I suppose. Like, if there's any criticism of it, it's that sometimes the conflict in it can be pretty not there. It's a similar problem too, Serving Gods Who Go Too Far as well. But, it at least feels like it's got a direction, it's moving forward with purpose in its stuff. In particular, our main character is building up an arsenal. And it is building up to kind of story-related stuff, and it does a good job of continuing to feel like it's building stuff up, which is good. It's probably its strongest thing. Let's see. I got a cheat skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the Real World 2, Episode 6. Again, the only problem I have with this anime is this is one that feels like it would be really great to binge. I also kind of hope that it's not aiming to be a one-core. Like, with the pacing it's doing interesting things, but I certainly hope it's a 2-core. Like, at least 20-something episodes. Maybe I can look at Mal and find out if it's planned to be. It's possible that it is only going to be a single core. I'm not quite sure what it would end cliffhanger-wise if it tried to do that. But it is just building up things that are really nice in general. It's like I said, they like to make sure they have long stills of you looking at the pretty girl faces that they make. And yeah, they look pretty girl faces. They look very distinctive. Not like a lot of others that you might see, I suppose. Although sometimes I have trouble mentally remembering who is who, because there's something very similar about a lot of them. But, that's fair. There's plenty of art styles that are like that. And this one isn't the most lost in the crowd these characters can be. I think mostly it's just, with me watching so many damn shows, I don't remember anybody's names. Blanking on... Obviously I remember Kane's name. But, blanking on a lot of stuff. But for this episode, if there's anything about this specific episode that I would say, that's a little convenient. It's like, it's a little convenient, but oh well. I guess the most interesting thing is to see how our main character reacts to it. And it's a pretty entertaining reaction to it. Without saying anything more about it. So it's entertaining, and it is showing more and more, okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how he became unrivaled in the Real World 2. And I guess the main problem is I'm not sure if the character is going to be able to keep growing. So at this point it's more like exploring elements of the world a bit more. And it's a little hesitant to do that. Hesitant may be the wrong word. I think it's very careful to do that. Maybe a better word for that. Which again is why if this is a 2-core, that's actually fine. The pacing is actually fine for that sort of thing. But as a 1-core, I would be a little, maybe not concerned, but maybe a little disappointed. Why Riley Anna ended up at the Duke's Mansion, episode 5. I'd say a pretty good episode, entertaining episode. If there's anything I'd worry about here, it's that it's hard to get a read on what the show is going to be leveraging long term for interest. So, like, I would say there's like, I was trying to think if I had an exact number. There's a multitude of different ways. You know, you have the original premise, and the original premise of this show only gives some leverage. Like, our main character knows that she was going to be killed by her fiance, and so she does a thing to break it off, and instead, kind of spend time with the Duke, who is now very curious about her. You know, but she's just using it to prevent the herself from being killed, and that as leverage, that's an okay setup. It's done a pretty good job. If anything is wrong with it, it's just that it's hard to kind of use that to prop the story up long term in the series. So, what else are you aiming for? Well, there's the other obvious thing, which comes with its own disaster. And disaster may be the wrong word. Maybe it's its own weakness. And that would be if you just lay completely on the shoujo aspect that it sets up. Like, if it's only about, oh, she interacts with this guy and then that guy and they think she's cool. You know, it's entertaining. But at that point, it's not really doing anything different per se, other than, you're just interested in the characters. And so that's okay. But it's also a weak thing to prop up a series with. And then it comes into, well, what about isekai tropes? Like, they established the fact that, there's two elements of that I could still see them playing with. One of those is advanced knowledge she has of their world thanks to having read the books. And the other one is advanced knowledge she would have because, like they pointed out, as somebody training to be the Duke's wife, she had to be good at math. The original Riley Anna wasn't good at math, but she was a studying college student in Japan. So their non-industrial world has math standards that are ridiculously easy to her. But I think they've already established they're not leaning on that, which makes me think that, they have to be leaning a little bit more heavily on that. Okay, does she know stuff about the book that makes events more interesting throughout there? And this episode just made me really think of that, because I feel like if it does the wrong thing, then it's not a good 3-episode anime, because you might not be able to tell whether or not you're going to like it long term after 3 episodes. Unless, of course, you really like the shoujo aspect and just like that period no matter what, in which case you'd probably be pretty good. But I guess I'd still make it a week 3 episode, because if you require the other elements around that, hard to predict. And last but not least, Dead Mount Death Play, episode 5, which, this series also continues to move on a kind of leisurely pace. Not too leisurely, just, it's just doing stuff as it goes, but I don't know, it's still setting up really interesting stuff, and I keep being interested in wanting to watch the next episode. And a lot of the stuff on this list, I've at least gone back and rewatched some of the episodes, because it's a neat thing. It's doing a neat thing. I'm kind of liking what it's doing. I'm definitely curious to see where it's going in the future. So, good episode 5, I would say. Whether or not this one is a good 3 episode, hard to say. Probably. I mean, I felt like after 3 episodes, I was feeling like it was pretty strong, if a bit leisurely in pace. And it feels like it's still the same, so that's all good. Anything else to talk about? I'm not sure. Because while I am continuing to do Dead by Daylight stuff, I don't know that I've done anything too notable. I'm just leveling up killers. Getting all the perks. I already have every killer at least up to Prestige 3, so that all unlocked killer abilities are already max level for all killers. And at this point, it's just about leveling up killers to get general perks on them. And I've only got 7 left to go out of 31, so, it's almost 3/4 of the way there, I suppose. Only 3/4? No. whatever. 24, 26. I don't know what I said. I might have said around the number on the stream there, but whatever. The point is, you know, I still have 7 more killers to go, and then I'll start doing the same for survivors. I've already got them all prestige 3, so I'll start getting all the general perks on them. And somewhere along the way, the next chapter is going to come out, and you know, I'll take a break. But it makes me think this year I will probably successfully get all perks unlocked on all killers and all survivors. Looking forward to it. What I do after that is probably save up some BP for chapters, maybe. But ultimately, I think I'd probably be dumping a lot of extra blood points into Michael Myers, just because playing around with Scratched Mirror and Vanity Mirror sounds really fun to me. I don't usually use a lot of add-ons on killers, but, you know, Michael, it's just like, yeah, there's something special about those add-ons. Everybody else, they've got good add-ons, but, man, Michael really just, he changes the game in a fun way, hopefully. Hopefully the way I play him will be fun when I go and do that. But beyond that, I guess what I need to do is just be mentally prepared for Tears of the Kingdom. I think that comes out on Friday, which means, you know, my copy will arrive whenever, and hopefully I'll have some sort of thought on it next week. Although you'll probably have lots and lots of other people you can probably hear from. Probably better people than the person who unboxes anime, but, you know, hopefully I'll be able to say something about it one way or the other. Is there anything else worth talking about? I guess not. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there, and y'all have a nice week.